Okay, so here we are in pre-calc, and we're talking about some of the basics of what we need to learn to get started on trig. Things like reference angles, coterminal angles, going back and forth between degrees and radians. So lots of basic trig stuff like that. And today we touched on how to write things in degrees with minutes and seconds versus a decimal. Now, both of these are about degrees. Okay, so this is degrees either way you look at it. But the difference is it's about what do I do if there's less than one whole degree? Like what if it's not 68 degrees? What if it's 68 and then a little bit of something else? So for instance, let's look at going from degrees. Well, let's start over here. Let's start with a decimal. I apologize for the lighting. I actually made an awesome video during school, uploaded it to YouTube, and found out that somehow I had pressed something or something happened that it was only 6 seconds long. So not so awesome after all. Okay, so starting out with decimal. I said I used 68 degrees as an example. What if we start out and we know that it's 68.72 degrees? Okay, meaning 68 whole degrees and then 72 1/100ths of a degree. Like there's less than one whole degree here. This is the part that gets converted. The 68 does not. When I change this to degrees, minutes, seconds, it's still going to be 68 degrees plus some minutes and seconds. So when I convert this, I know for sure I have at least 68 whole degrees. It's this part that gets changed. It's the leftovers. It's the less than 1 degree. It's the portion of a degree that gets written one of two different ways, as a decimal here or in terms of minutes and seconds. So let's look for a second at how those relate. In 1 degree, we have 60 seconds. Sorry, start over there. 60 minutes. I apologize. I was trying to think ahead here. So 1 degree has 60 minutes in it. Okay, and 1 minute has, this is where I was thinking, 60 seconds. These are not exactly the same kind of minutes and seconds that we normally use with time. There's a relationship, but it's not a direct relationship. It's not exactly the same thing. So one thing that we sometimes need to know is how to get from degrees to seconds or seconds to degrees. Okay, if there are 60 minutes in every degree, and every single one of those 60 minutes has 60 seconds in it, then 1 degree is 60 times 60, or 3,600 seconds. Okay, so these are our basic conversion factors that we'll use. Okay, so if we start with a decimal, all right, then basically what it ends up doing is I need to find out what 72 1/100ths of a degree is in terms of minutes. I'm changing it to minutes. So what I do is I take that 0.72, just that part, just the decimal, and I multiply it times 60. Okay? I thought it might be easier to see something that has some illumination here, so well, that's a little bright, but nonetheless, it's something. So I get 43.2. Okay, so what that tells me is I have 43 minutes, but it wasn't exactly 43 minutes, it was 43.2 minutes. So I take, it was 43.2. I take the 0.2 and I say, well, how much of a minute is that? How many seconds is 0.2 minutes? So again, I do 0.2, just the decimal part, times 60. And that's 12. So 68.72 degrees is 68 degrees, 43 minutes. We use one single apostrophe for minutes, and 12 seconds. And that's my answer. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's say I start out with, oh, I don't know, 112.34 degrees. Well, I know I'm going to have 112 degrees because I already do. That part doesn't change. Okay, it's just going to be that this, the 0.34 of 1 degree, changes into minutes and seconds. So to figure out how to do that, I'm going to take just the decimal part, the 0.34, and I'm going to take 0.34 times 60. It's always times 60 here. And that's 20.4 minutes. Okay, 20.4 is the number of minutes. I'm not going to go ahead and write that 0.4 though, because I can still change that into seconds. So I'm going to go back here. It was 20.4, remember? And I'm just going to do 0.4. Also times 60, because there are 60 seconds in a minute. And it's 24 seconds. So 112.34 degrees is 112 degrees, 20 minutes, 24 seconds. Last one. Let's say I have negative 43.27 degrees. Okay? I'm going to basically do it as if there's no negative, because that's not the most important thing here. I'm going to go ahead and transfer it into degrees, minutes, seconds, and then pop a negative back on front, because if it's negative, it's going to be negative. It's really not an issue going this way, but we do have to be careful about that when we're going the other way. So let's just go ahead and do this one, and then I'll show you what I mean when we go from degrees, minutes, seconds back to decimals. So I take the 0.27 only. We know the negative 43 degrees is going to stay that way. The 0.27 gets multiplied times 60. 0.27 times 60, and I get 16.2. So that means there's 16 whole minutes and 0.2 of a minute, which I have to figure out how many seconds that is. So again, 0.2, just the 0.2 from the 16.2 times 60, and that's 12. So that's 12 seconds, and that's my final answer. Now, going the other way, starting with degrees, minutes, seconds. Okay, let's say I have 25 degrees, 16 minutes, and 43 seconds. Okay, now this way it's kind of formulaic because we always do pretty much the same thing. Now don't forget, there's definitely it's gonna start with 25. It's gonna be 25 point something degrees. Because if we have 25 whole degrees, that part doesn't get converted. It's just these extra little bits of a degree that get converted. Okay, so I know it's going to be 25 point something. Here's how I find out the point something. This is 25 whole degrees. Plus, we said there are 60 minutes in 1 degree. So this is 16 over 60. 16 sixtieths of a degree. And then remember, we said that there are actually 3,600 seconds in 1 degree. And we're trying to go straight from all of this all into degrees. So we're going to say plus 43 3600ths of a degree. And then I'm going to do that in my calculator. And I definitely don't have the best calculator for doing that, but I will do it nonetheless. So we've got 25 plus 16 sixtieths plus 43 3600ths. And that gives me 25.278. And I think in your textbook it asks you to go, actually that's approximately, to go to the thousandths place. So this is going to be 25.279. 25.279 degrees. I could write it up here. Okay, this part is always the same. When we're starting out with degrees, minutes, seconds, let's say it's A degrees, B minutes, C seconds. It always goes A plus B over 60 plus C over 3600. That's the same way you convert it every single time. All right, so let's say we have 78 degrees, 23 minutes, and 35 seconds. That means we're going to do 78 plus 23/60ths of a degree plus 36/100ths of a degree. And I'm going to do that on this calculator, which is not the best calculator, but that's okay. Sometimes we work with what we've got. 35 divided by 3600 and 78.393. So I'm going to change this to a little squiggly, approximately equal to 78.393. Remember that this is not going to change. If I start out with 78 whole degrees, I'm going to end up with 78 whole degrees. That part does not change. Okay, so here's what we got to be careful about is what about when it's negative? What if I had negative 125 degrees, 4 minutes and 15 seconds? Okay. Now, if you think about it on the number line, this is a number that is further than 125 away from 0. In other words, here's 0. If this is 125 degrees in the negative direction, it's somewhere over here. It's a little bit more than that in the negative direction. So I have to be careful, because if I were to say it's negative 125 and then add 4/60ths and then add 15/3600ths, adding on a number line moves to the right. So I have to be careful not to do that. So the easiest way to do it is just to make sure that that negative stays there. And then just figure it out without even worrying about the sign. In other words, just let's do 125 plus 4/60ths plus 15/3600ths. Okay, so 125 plus 4/60ths plus 15/3600ths gives me 125.0708, so 0.071. So 125.071. And I know that it's supposed to be negative, so that's just going to be negative. The other way you could do it is you could start with negative 125, and since we're moving to the left from there, it's really subtracting. So I could think of it as negative 125 minus this, because I'm moving further to the left each time. I think it's easier just to make sure I realize, hey, it's negative, so it's going to end up negative. Now let me treat it like it's not negative while I'm doing the math, and then make sure my final answer does have the negative on it. And that's pretty much what you got to do.